Welcome to Shepherd of the Hills, our Faith at Work series. We are so glad that you are here. I'm Pastor Tom Grevelis, and on behalf of Pastor Lauren Dow-Wagner and our whole staff here at Shepherd of the Hills, we are glad to have you join us for this wonderful series, Faith at Work. And today we have a very special guest with us. She serves on staff here along with Lumen Campus Ministry at University of Texas, and her name is Rebecca Guengerich. And so, Rebecca, great to have you here.
Good
Thank
to
you
here.
for being here. You are a PK.
I am.
You're a pastor's kid.
All the good and the bad that goes with that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, were there other pastors in your family as well?
Oh yeah. I came from a long line of pastors. I have dad was a pastor, uncles, cousins, brother-in-laws. I think there's like 6 or 7 different pastors. So yeah, all of our life is revolved around faith.
It's been around church, right?
Yeah.
So where did you do most of your growing up then? Or did your dad move around some?
Yeah, he did. He started in North Dakota, and I was actually born there, but then moved to Texas, and in the Panhandle of Texas, in a small country church, and I was there till 3rd grade, and then moved to Yorktown down by Victoria, and that was through my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And then they moved to the Hill Country, but those were the 2 places that I was.
2 main places.
Yeah, that I was born.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Yeah.
So you're quite familiar with the church, Lutheran Church, and all that goes with that as a pastor's kid, and you're still connected to the church.
I'm still here.
That's great. You survived.
I did.
That's great. So, first of all, it's wonderful to have you on staff here at Shepherd of the Hills in the ministry of working with our Stephen ministry, with spiritual direction, with faith formation, with all sorts of different kinds of things that relate to adult faith. And so,
right, it's a good place for me to be.
Yeah, that's great. So, tell me more about your ministry here at Shepherd of the Hills, along with your ministry at Lumen Campus Ministry.
Well, I always say that they're both listening, but and I think it's listening to the older person, the adult, and that at Lumen it is listening to the younger folks. And so the questions there are, what am I going to do with life? How am I supposed to live? Those kinds of things. But here it's more of the raising the family. What am I going to do also with work? I mean, that question I think kind of goes with us throughout life.
Right.
And then you get down to the questions of how am I going to live as I get into older age, and how do I find meaning? Mm-hmm. And so it's just all of those questions, those spiritual questions of life.
Yeah, we go through different life stages and passages of life that there are always going to be questions and always transitions.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of faith, is that it kind of sees us through the entirety of our life.
Right.
So.
And of course, in these last 7 months, as we have been basically so dramatically affected by the COVID virus, tell us just about some of the ministry you've been doing in the midst of that.
Well, I would say most of my ministry lately now has just been calling people and emailing, and I think my favorite thing is just to kind of sometimes email people and throw out a deeper question, how are you feeling today? Or, where do you see God's presence? Or what are your boundaries? What are your limits? And things like that. Mm-hmm. And the emails that I get back are just really heartfelt emails. And that just gives me great joy, because it gives me a chance to see that people, even in the midst of pandemic, and you think that there's a lot of stress, and there is a lot of stress, but people are taking the time to really be deep and reflective about how God is present in their lives, and I think that is helping them get through a lot of this pandemic. So.
Yeah, I think there's just I think a lot of people are dealing with a lot of just self-reflection and,
Oh, yeah.
and almost self-analysis in a way
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
just because I mean everything has been so disruptive.
Right.
Yep.
Even at Lumen, where a lot of times they haven't gone through the struggles of life quite as much, but we do a tailgate Tuesdays where we just serve food, and the students will come up and you say, well, how are you? And most of the time people will go, oh, good, I'm fine,
Yeah.
But even the students are saying, I'm not going to lie to you, this has been a tough year, So
Yeah.
you do see how at all stages of life people need to know that God is there.
And how important it is for people to remain or to feel a sense of connection
Oh,
to something bigger, God, but
Yes.
also to each other.
yes, yes, definitely, yeah. I just told a student today, I see really the importance of that incarnational ministry, how
Yeah.
Jesus became flesh, and I think that's most important now. So,
Yeah. In fact, our Christmas ministry theme this year is Jesus in person.
absolutely, that's going to be a beautiful thing. Yeah,
Because it's all about that incarnation.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Christ in our midst. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So how does your ministry in both places, provide a place of importance in your life? I mean, what has been important to you personally?
I think for me, it has been the opportunity to bring both the sacred and the secular together in my life. And, as you were saying, I was raised in a pastor's family, and there were 9 of us, 7 children, 2 parents. And so in a sense, we lived in a monastery,
Yeah.
in a sense,
Yeah.
in the real world. I mean, it was like I would go to the church and see my dad preach, and then I would see him come home, and just the normal struggles of parenting. And people would come to the house for dinner, and they would ask all these really deep questions. And so, I would see that there wasn't a separation of secular and sacred. It was all of life together. And so I think that has been the importance of my ministry at both places, at Lumen and here, is how do you integrate all of that? And how do you make people come to that transformational stage of life where you realize that it's not about me, but it's about God, and it's how I can be a little Christ in the world.
So it kind of begs the question: is there really such a thing as secular, or is it just all sacred because it is God's?
Yeah, everything
creation?
is. Yes,
Right.
everything is that. And then,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I've loved about this ministry of spiritual direction.
Yeah. And just the presence, being a presence, and seeing God present. So have you ever? Do you have anything specific example where you have really felt or witnessed the presence of God in the midst of a situation that you have been ministering to?
I was trying to think of that, and I've had many, many moments like that. I mean, I've seen the healing of my nephew. I've seen like in the ministry of my father, just how people have changed because of the church. Coming from alcohol or divorce or career changes, all those kinds of things. But so in a sense, in my life, it's not been one moment, but it's just been a bunch of moments. And, even years ago when I was struggling I was pregnant with my first child, and I was struggling to know whether I should get out of the workforce or stay in it. And I can clearly remember just sitting up in the balcony at the church in Houston and hearing, maybe one day I'll go to this seminary, not to be a pastor, but something, and I don't know what. And, spiritual direction, I didn't have a clue of what that was. But then I've just seen how over the years it's just brought me to this place of being a presence for people. And
So
that
what was it
fun.
about spiritual direction that just drew you to that?
Well, I think it was just that it was probably my mom's ministry. People would come over to the table, or over to the house, and they would sit. It was a small town, so people were coming and going all the time. And, she would just sit and listen to people over a cup of coffee. And, we would be in the next room and hearing these conversations. But you could just see how that ministry of presence was so important, and in my dad's ministry as well. That it was just a different way, I guess, of being that way. And so yeah, I think that's been important to me with that spiritual direction. And then I think that spirit too has probably, like most people, drawn me out of the church sometimes, because you feel like, okay, is this all there is to the church? Is this little building? And at the time I was thinking about going to seminary. I went to a spiritual director for the first time ever, and I started exploring the bigger, larger God that there is. And it's not just a Lutheran God, or it's not just a Christian God.
Really?
It's true.
Wow.
It's true. So, but then coming, and you feel like you're alone here in the church. You don't think anybody thinks like you. But then you explore it, and I came back, and I remember going to the World Parliament of Religion. 10,000 people from all kinds of religious backgrounds. And there was a little group of people here at Shepherd of the Hills that were, that were interested in going the next time. And so, you find these support systems that you never dared to ask about. So, yeah.
It's good. So how have you used your work and your background in spiritual direction, you think, in the ministry that you're currently doing in Lumen and Shepherd of the Hills?
It's primarily just listening. And I probably thought when I went into this that I was going to have a little room where people would sit down and we would have these wonderful conversations, and I do a lot of times. But I also have a lot of those conversations in the parking lot. I had a house repair the other week, and I just asked the repair person, how is he doing? And, he just started unloading about, his divorce. And so it was like, okay, my house repair is unimportant right now. This is what's important. So, Did
he charge you for the time?
Yeah, I said, I'll trade you here.
Right.
But so, yeah, at Shepherd of the Hills and at Lumen, it's just a ministry of being present and listening. And it's not coming with an agenda. It's just coming with that listening ear. And it's no answers,
So let's explore that whole word of listening a little bit, because I think it's, we can, at one level we kind of say, I'm a good listener, or somebody listened to me, but you're talking about a much deeper level of listening. How would you differentiate?
I would say just affirming what you say, and not judging. Sometimes people, might feel judged by having a certain viewpoint of things, but it's just saying, yeah, that's an okay thing for you to have that. A lot of other people have that. It's just mirroring back what they hear. And honestly, sometimes it is just sitting there and being quiet. And as you are quiet, people just go deeper and deeper, and those layers just come off and are revealed. And sometimes it's just them hearing themselves speak, and as they hear themselves speak, then they know what they have to do and to make that change. But yeah, it's a lot of just affirming and reflective listening.
Yeah, just that permission giving, I think it really helps to for people to feel like they can get something that's inside of them, outside of them, outside of themselves. So it no longer has that same amount of power.
Exactly.
Within.
Exactly.
And so I think that's I would really call what you're talking about, Rebecca, as holy listening. I mean, I just, you can imagine that. Just imagine that Jesus was just the master listener. I mean, and he listened not only to people, but he listened to culture. He listened to the world that was around him. He listened to what people were experiencing as well. So
it is bringing in all of those.
It's a bigger than even one-on-one. It can be very much of a communal.
Right. Yeah. That's always a fun experience too, to have a group spiritual direction and just listen to what the other people have to say, and then that kind of shapes and informs how you think.
Right. What do you think, working with college-age students, what do you think are some of their great challenges that they're facing? I mean, other than certainly, a current challenge of the COVID, but what do you think, just kind of on a spiritual, emotional, level do you think that they're wrestling with in their life?
At that time, it's who am I? Um, and for the first time, they get away from their parents, and they're having to decide for themselves, what does this faith mean to me? You know, do I want to give it up? Do I want to go deeper with it? Do I want to explore some other options? So it's a lot of that, just deciding, what does this faith really mean to me? And
so who am I apart from who my parents want me to be?
Right, exactly, exactly. I think I want to, shed some of that stuff that my parents want, but so yeah, it's wrestling with those faith questions, and it's the vocational discernment. What do I want to do with my life? Am I here just to work, or does this work bring value, and does this work bring meaning? And then it's how to be in relationship with one another in a community, because they are away from their parents and the people that they loved, and so now how do I form this new community? How do I find meaning within that new community?
And people I can trust. And people
Yes.
Well, you have been here for off and on at Shepherd of the Hills for a number of years. What kind of challenges have you seen in ministry that are a part of this faith community and the church in general, because you've grown up in the church?
Well, sometimes I want the church to move a whole lot faster than it does. But it just doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to slowly listen. And I guess that's now that I'm at this age, I have the perspective of looking back, and I can see how God is at work in the church. And I think about how my mom she was so proud of the fact that she voted to have women ordained in the church. At that point, women...
Was that 1970 or something like that?
Yeah, 70, 71, something like that. And, that was a proud moment for her. And then it kind of evolved into the GLBT, do we ordain people who are of that persuasion, with the racism, that was even in the 60s. And I've seen over the years how slowly we have evolved, and God has brought us to this place of transformation, to where we see that, all are included in this kingdom of God. And that's kind of fun, because you can get caught up in these little moments, even at this church, you can get caught up in the little moments, but, now that God is still at work and still there, changing us.
Yeah, I'll never forget a defining moment for my experience in my home church back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, was the big downtown church, and very, what I would call a very conservative congregation, big church, but it hosted the AIM movement, people who were walking and going to Washington, D.C. for, this was back in like 1972, the American Indian movement. And I remember them providing a dinner. I remember how controversial that was to practice hospitality, Christ-like hospitality, but they did it.
Yeah.
And my mom was down there, and my dad was down there helping, and I was just so proud of the church. Sometimes it's those small acts, but they're big acts, but they kind of break the ice.
Yeah, they do.
And I feel like we're breaking ice.
Oh, right.
Here, if you think about just starting to break through, so it does take time.
It does. Right. Well, last night we were serving at the Tailgate Tuesday, and we had Buddhists come up, we had Baptists, we had Mormons, we had gay, and it was just like, it was to me such a beautiful moment about everyone is invited to the banquet, and that's so much more of a freeing place to be than to say, well, no, you can have this food, but you can't, and that's what the church is supposed to be. That's what God is.
So how has Shepherd of the Hills been a place that's supported you and helped you just to be able to kind of live out your vocational calling, or continue to live out that, see that evolve over the years?
Oh, these are good people here at Shepherd of the Hills, and been in all the Bible study classes and the sermons and with my youth, or with the children, bringing them to youth Sunday school classes. And they've always accepted me for who I am. And they know me best, and sometimes I don't want to listen. But in the end, as you kind of sit and reflect, you know that what they speak sometimes is the truth. And sometimes that, there's tension between what I believe and what I think others should believe. And yet this group has just walked together, and we all come to a place of a new understanding of who God is. And I probably even pushed you this summer a little bit on some things, and I was going to push you and make this church to be a better place. And yet I had to sit back and I had to realize that, no, there's other people at different places. And so, we do have to bring everybody along in this. So yeah, the people are just, I look back and I just can name things that everybody has done for me. And that's a good thing that the church has been.
That's great. And it's fun to see your daughter, Lauren, who's re-engaged here with and helping us out with our journey, our walk to Bethlehem, and providing some nutritional meals and ideas, and that's wonderful.
That was fun to see that growth.
Yeah. So what do you hope for Shepherd of the Hills for the future? I mean, 5 years from now, what do you hope is going on here at Shepherd of the Hills that's continuing to be a faithful witness in the world?
Well, I think being the church without the walls, and that's something that I guess, as I saw with my mom's ministry, it was a church without walls, and they were in the community as well as in the church. And I've seen that happen more and more now at Shepherd of the Hills, with the Mariposa, with the Haiti. We are getting out there more and more. And I think that only makes us better people, because we understand more that there's more than just us here, And so I would say just Shepherd of the Hills should just keep growing and keep connecting to God and to love. That's where the transformation is going to happen. Might take time.
Yeah. Well, and it's so much about, building relationships, and these relationships are, find their way, and you work together to try to be moving forward, bringing everybody along, but also not to be divisive either. Try to continue to build up the body of Christ and not tear it down. And there's so much tearing down, that's going on within our society today, that this can be it's kind of interesting. I think the church is always in this holy tension between being a place of almost a refuge, and a sanctuary from the world, and yet to re-engage back into the world. And that's always sort of that. And one without the other is no longer the church.
My favorite thing in seminary was go to your cell and it will teach you everything. And so, the whole deal is you go kind of inward, and as you sit there, you become silent and you begin to understand who God is. But then you can't sit in that cell anymore. You have to go back out, and because that's what's propelling you back out in the world. And so it's just this cycle. You keep going to your cell, but then you keep going back out. And so I've kind
of the inward-outward journey. Piece, I remember in seminary, I had a professor that would always talk about the figure eight, the inward-outward journey, and I used to just get so tired of hearing him say that, and so, but now I'm using the same thing, so there you go.
There must be some wisdom to that.
It's kind of like when your mom says something to you when you're a kid, and then you find yourself saying the same thing when you're parenting. But
we become our parents.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a commercial like that. So is there anything else, Rebecca, that maybe you just thought about or would like to share? Anything from this whole Faith at Work kind of series?
I've really enjoyed hearing other people's stories, and that's been really fun. And I guess for me, it is, I would say, just stay connected to the church. There are times when you want to go away, and maybe you do for a bit, but come back, because always ground yourself in Christ. And that is going to be what shapes your work in the world and your vocation that you just naturally do. And the more you can listen to what you naturally do, the more I think you will transform the world.
So I'm, just in closing, I'm doing a Zoom Ignite small group with college age. And so I had mine last night with them, and it was on who am I, the whole question of identity. And it was marvelous conversation. And you can tell, just like all of us, whatever age we're at, that, you know, they too are kind of struggling with that vocationally, you know, who they are, you know, within themselves and that sort of thing. But they're working at it, and it's great. But the last thing I said to them, I said, who you are ultimately is grounded in the reality is that you are a child of God.
Absolutely.
And that's your full, that's the most important part of your identity.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That is absolutely right. So.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation, Rebecca. I appreciate the ministry that you do. In many ways, it's a very quiet ministry that is very unrecognized, but certainly it makes a difference, and it makes a difference to the people that you connect with, and it makes a difference to our community, not just here at Shepherd of the Hills, but on the campus of University of Texas with the campus ministry, and just, you know, just in the people that you meet. And
well, I'm just doing my vocation, and that's when you know when you enjoy it.
Yeah.
So.
So God bless you in your
Thank you.
future vocation.
Thank you.
Rebecca. So we really appreciate Rebecca and her time, and we look forward to having you be a part of this conversation on Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the evening. If you do happen to miss it, it'll be recorded, and so you can go to Shepherd of the Hills, shephills.org/watch, and you can pick it up there. And I really encourage you to try to find the time, a half hour of your time, to be a part of this, and maybe even find yourself a little bit in the story as well. Once again, thank you for being here. Just one other quick announcement, and that is on the 24th of October, which is a Saturday morning from 10 to noon. We were very excited to have Dr. Peter Marty with us for a Faith in the Public Square, talking about how does the church function in society, kind of some of the things we touched on here. But how do we live within our world as citizens of heaven, citizens on earth? This sort of this paradox in which we live. So Dr. Marty is a tremendous pastor, theologian. He's the editor and publisher of Christian Century magazine, and he will be a real gift to be with us. And so we hope that you will watch for a registration process and get registered and be a part of that morning with us. Thank you once again. May God bless your day. May God bless your week.